it's likely that the entire lot would be impacted.
That's important to know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And then we really won't know what rendering or what alternative we're leaning towards until, is it the latter part of 23? Can you kind of shed light and help us determine when we're kind of having a sound idea of which alternative we're going to go with?
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman Diaz. And to answer that question, the end of 2023 is when the environmental all wraps up and we have our final report and can move to the next phase. But we will have information prior to then that you'll know which way that the project is moving towards, and will allow the public to comment to say, I don't agree with that. Can you rethink it? I really like this separate alternative, or whatever the case is. So we will be interacting with the public and the community as we go throughout this process, and would love to continue to collaborate with the Southern Nevada Regional Authority. But to answer your question specifically, come January, we should know which direction we're moving as far as the preferred alternative goes. And then we'll have a comment period, and I'm not for sure how long that will be, but it could be several months, to allow the community and the people to comment on whether they think or agree, or, provide their information on what their thoughts are on that being the preferred alternative. And so we'll provide all the reasons of why. They'll be able to comment on it, and they'll either change or it will move forward as originally decided.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to thank you all for the outreach efforts that you have had. Just kind of rewinding, I'm thinking that we as the Regional Housing Authority would have a lot of input, the employees that work here, residents that live adjacent and in this area. And so hopefully we could be a better partner in the next go as you guys continue to vet the direction that this ends up being on, that we can hopefully help provide information out into the community so that they can also be part of, giving us their feedback and telling us what they think about where this project is heading. So I just wanted that for us to note that as an agency, that we should also be doing our due diligence here to make sure that we're getting the information out.
Thank you. Chairperson Black, can I make a comment? Is that
Certainly.
okay?
Yes, Mr. Wheeler, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diaz. And I just wanted to reiterate that that's the reason we're here, is to communicate, to be open. We know the information that we're presented is not nobody likes that, right? When your buildings may be impacted and your business may be impacted and the services you provide may be impacted. We're trying to involve the community and make the best decisions, given that the freeway needs to be widened. With that said, we care about the comments, and right now is the time to comment, because right now is when we're deciding what is the final project going to be, and we don't know that yet. So we have 3 build alternatives that we're considering, and we want your comments about it. Even if you don't like any of them, comment. You go to the website, and there's an email. I think it's info@ndotdap.com. Is that right, Debbie? You could touch base with me or Debbie afterwards as well. That's why we did this street closure campaign, to put signs in the middle of the streets and to draw, and actually close the streets temporarily to draw attention, because we want to, sometimes DOT projects and orange cones just aren't fun, no matter what. And we all have to deal with it. But we would rather do it with the voice of the community and them being involved than not having that.
Any other question? Commissioner McCurdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this presentation. I was just wondering, what was the impact analysis of the number of residents who would be impacted, by this project? And the second question, or follow-up, if you will, to that is, what percentage of the individuals who would be impacted have been successfully contacted?
So 2 excellent questions. The first, as far as the analysis of how many properties are impacted, we have those numbers, but I don't have them on the top of my tongue, so I apologize. And each alternative is a little bit different on the number of properties that are impacted. And then again, depending on the alternative, how it goes through the downtown area, those impact different properties as well. So we have those numbers. I'm not able to share the number of properties depending on the alternative. As far as has each property been notified? We hope so. We want them to be. We've to give you a little bit of background, we've sent, back when we did the virtual public meeting in August and September, we sent out 20,000 mailers to everybody surrounding I-515, from I-15 all the way to Charleston, essentially. When we did this street closure campaign, we sent out another 10,000 postcards. And we get that people get mail and don't look at their postcards, and that's why we put signs in the middle of the street to try and drive awareness. We're also talking about going door to door. Once this pandemic ends and we are okay going door to door and having those conversations, we'll probably do that. And so that's definitely 100% our goal, is to not only touch base with those properties that potentially may be acquired or impacted, but also to drive awareness outside of those properties, because people use these roads and commutes, and we would like them to know about the project as well and provide their comments. And now's the time to provide your comment and be a part of the decision-making process.
Thank you for that, and we do know that this has been an incredibly difficult year for many of our residents across Clark County. But I was wondering, I know that we have a residential communications piece as a part of the campaign, but in terms of the commercial communication that has been done, has that success rate been better in terms of comments back to you about this proposed exploratory project that may take place in the next few years?
So for me to clarify your question, are you asking if the commercial comments from the commercial group is similar to the residential group?
Yeah, or have they been higher in terms of just response rate to
Quantity?
to the possibility?
So good question again, and love your thought process. So I would say to date that so far it's been equal, but originally it wasn't. Originally, we think we probably got more comments from the commercial side, and we weren't getting the voice of the area between Las Vegas Boulevard and Eastern. Over the last 5 or 6 weeks, when we did this street campaign, I think we've reached that group. We've reached the residential group. In talking with my colleague Debbie, we think that anybody that lives in this area should know about the project now, after this campaign that we've done for the last 5 weeks. That we'd be surprised if there's somebody that does not know about it. But we want to turn over every rock and do the best that we can to touch base with everybody. That's why we're continuing to talk about doing boots on the ground, knocking on doors, to make sure everybody is aware. Thank you.
I just want to follow up, and I do realize the complexity of trying to execute successfully, any type of mass communication campaign, especially as it relates to construction horizontal projects. So the last and final question that I have is, you spoke briefly to the understanding of having to have fair market value given to the impacted community members, and in that case, you're going to have a lot of people who and again, I realize that we are still in the exploratory phase of this, but what is the cost of the project? Number one, but number two is, what type of federal matches do we have coming down that can assist with that, being that there is a conversation now, at the national level about, an infrastructure bill, and do we have folks who are lobbying, I'm sure that we do, on our behalf for this project?
Yeah, so a few questions there. First of all, cost of the project, we don't have that fully nailed down because we don't know which alternative we're going to build, and there's some alternatives that are more expensive than others. But the total neon cost was about $1 billion, and we anticipate that this project will be upwards above that, above $1 billion. Are we lobbying and trying to take advantage of the current $2 trillion infrastructure bill? NDOT's doing what they can. I don't know if it's specific directly towards this project, but we're doing what we can to try and bring in money to the state of Nevada for sure. We do have allocation of planning, our planning to fund this project, but we have not yet secured the next phase of the project, which is right-of-way acquisitions and design, and we have not yet secured or allocated the money to construct the project yet. So we take those by phases. And so once the NEPA finishes up, we'll work on securing that next phase of the project. And so 18 months from now, hopefully that next phase is secured.
Thank you. I had a similar question. I'll go to the remainder of the board, but before I forget, I had a similar question that Commissioner McCurdy asked relative to the number of potentially displaced residential units associated with the project. You said there is a range. I would be curious what the maximum number could be, and if you could relay that to our staff. I know you don't have that data in your head, but if you could relay that to our staff. We're focused largely on affordable housing. However, this is a big piece of the entire housing equation in Southern Nevada. I think it'd be helpful to know the number of units that would be coming offline and would need to be replaced somewhere else within the community. And some of the folks that live in this area could maybe even be tenants of the housing authority, as a housing choice voucher holder. And also some of the units might be more in the lower income and or affordable housing range. And so I'd be curious of just a snapshot of what the maximum number of units would be that would be impacted by the project.
I'm just going to go back to this slide because it shows the potential impacts, and it shows the buildings and apartment units for Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority.
No, that one there was pretty straightforward.
Okay.
That's 20 and from 20 to 48, just adjacent. I'm talking about comprehensively.
Oh, across the whole project.
Across the entire, throughout the entire swath of the project.
Okay.
Not specifically housing authority related, just general residential housing units. Maximum potential impact, including the 20 to 48 that would be directly related to us.
Okay, yeah, we'll take a look.
Okay, yeah, if you have that data, we would love to have that just as a point of reference.
Sure.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Wheeler? Those of you that are on the phone or video?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is
Councilman Shaw, go ahead.
Mr. Wheeler. One of the issues that we've had in the past in dealing with NDOT is that as they have their appraisers go in, that those appraisers do not communicate with, for example, the housing authority. And so it ends up that their values tend to be lower than what others might believe, and it ends up going to court to figure out what the real values are. Example, you indicate that 20 to 48 units will be impacted. Well, the reality is that there will be others who will be constructively evicted because they live immediately next door to a freeway. And so how do we coordinate with you and voice our concerns as they do these appraisals that they have taken into account all of the units to include our offices and everything else that are impacted by, you name it, pollution, noise, unavailability of parking, access issues, all those kinds of things. Will they in fact coordinate with us and talk with us?
100%. 100%. We'll coordinate with you as much as we need to. If you guys have any concerns or issues, I'm right here. You can contact me. You'll have my contact information via the website. Debbie Bonet is our community liaison. We have a right-of-way team that will be meeting with the necessary representatives and the people that live within the units. And if you ever have any concerns or issues, please let us know. That's why we're talking to you right now, to make you aware. And we don't want to go away. We're not just here to. We know it's going to be difficult, and we want to be a good partner in doing it.
I know I can always get a hold of you. The concern is you hire an appraiser, and that appraiser may or may not talk with us, and I want to ensure that they are in fact going to talk with us so that we can express our concerns to them before they come up with a number, and then we end up having to go through all of the legal hassle to contest that number.
And I want to make sure they're talking with you as well. And if they're not, then that's why you're going to talk to me, and then they'll start talking to you more.
Very good. Thank you.
Excuse me, I just have one more question, Commissioner Craig. Now, you stated something that I think is great. You stated that you would be possibly going from door to door. Do you have a history of doing that? And how effective has it been, if you've ever done it?
Yeah, so NDOT's done that many times. In fact, when we did the street closure campaign, we had a team that was walking the streets and talking to people, and some people that are driving the streets would pull over and talk to them. Other people that were walking the streets would stop and talk to them. And it's been very efficient. A lot of times, if people just look at the information on the website and make a comment, it's done without a full understanding. But when you're able to knock on a door and talk to somebody face to face, even though they may not like what NDOT is doing, you're able to talk through the process of why it needs to be done, and the understanding comes. And so human interaction is so much better than just receiving information and sending off an email. So yeah, we have done many door-to-door outreach campaigns with other projects. We have had good success with that. And we hope to have good success in this effort as well.
Now, when you say door to door, my mind is you're going to be knocking on every individual door because everyone is not computer savvy.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is not thrilled about getting information or data, whatever, over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is everyone that's going to be impacted, someone's going to be not just driving, but knock the door, like politicians sometimes do, door to door.
Correct.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Wheeler? Anyone from the video? I just have one final question, Mr. Wheeler. We spent a lot of time talking about the long-range, massive rebuilding of the freeway, but you also mentioned the 12-month, $30 million lane addition and improvements. Are there any foreseeable impacts to this facility here? Meaning, like, are there times when we would have to close the parking lot or close the building for certain types of construction activity, or has that not been determined?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I'd have to double check with the other project manager that is working on that.
Okay.
But not that I'm aware of.
Okay, if they forecast any, thing, if we could just get a calendar of that way, if we needed to have a disruption to our operations here to maintain safety, if they're doing something up above,
Yeah.
just keep us in the loop on that.
I'll follow up with you on
Okay,
that.
thanks so much for your presentation today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, we don't need a vote on this, Mr. Parker, correct? Just a presentation only. Item number 10, receive report from the interim executive director on administrative and operational activities of the agency. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce to you Mr. John Gressley. He is our interim executive director. We're really appreciative. I think this is the conclusion of your third week or fourth week. Okay, time flies. Conclusion of his fourth week. Thankfully you're here, and many of you here in the audience, employees, have gotten to know Mr. Gressley, but let's turn the time over to him for his report. Mr. Gressley.
Thank you, Chairman Black. And I will comment that, not being real familiar with your protocol and your meeting, I think some of what I may have to say will blend between item 10 and item 11. Let me begin by saying that this is the end of my fourth week. And I've spent much of this time getting to know the organization, getting to know the agency. I've had the chance to talk with most of the commissioners individually, some in person and some by phone. And I look forward to completing those conversations. I believe I'm gaining a really strong appreciation for the assets of this agency. And I say assets because you have many fine qualities in the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. Beginning with your human talent, the commissioners, the employees of the agency, I think have much to offer and much value. And I certainly congratulate you all for the work that's going on here, has been going on, and I believe will continue. My focus has been and will continue to be to try to make sure that we're all kind of moving in a direction that's set out by the Board of Commissioners, by setting a vision and clarifying the mission of the agency and the direction we want to go. There are a number of things that are happening. There's quite a juggling act going on because there's a lot of balls in the air that need to be kept in the air and kept moving forward. So I do anticipate that the May meeting is probably going to be a lengthy meeting, or certainly a meeting of substantial substance. And just to give you a heads up on some of these things, I'll be recommending to you at that meeting the formation of a number of commission committees so that you can do some of the work. One will focus on working with a recruiter for the selection of a permanent executive director. That's perhaps one of the most important committees that I'll be recommending. Secondly, we're moving into our budget cycle. And you may want to, most likely will want to use your administrative committee to work on the budget. And third, I'm going to recommend that you develop or appoint a bylaws committee. As from a number of directions, I've received recommendations, and I'm seeing that you are receiving recommendations that the bylaws need to be looked at. Just a couple of other things to mention to you that are going to be occupying a fair amount of our time. Obviously, we're heading into contract negotiations with SEIU, and a negotiating committee has been formed, and they are beginning to meet. Another item that we're looking at is that I mentioned your assets, and I began with the people that are here, both commission and staff. This agency is fortunate to have many other physical assets, properties, some of which offer potential for redevelopment, some of which you very successfully already redeveloped and should be very proud of. Much of that activity has begun to slow a bit, and so we're putting our foot on the gas pedal on that among staff. And when we have formulated our recommendations, we'll be coming back to the board, kind of outlining recommendations for the board to consider in setting out a vision and a mission of our redevelopment activities going forward. I also appreciate the fact that Mr. Wheeler is still here, because that's another big issue. The highway relocation, or the highway rebuild, is going to be a big issue for us, and it actually might dovetail with some of the other things we're looking at. As we look at opportunities for developing vacant land, as we look at opportunities for redeveloping properties that need to be redeveloped, we need to consider all of the physical assets of the housing authority that are going to be impacted. And there are a number of ways that we're going to be impacted that I just want to emphasize, just from the discussion we've had today. First, the big impact is going to be on our Section 8 program. The Section 8 program occupies the building that is, I think in virtually every version, I think that one building is to be eliminated. And so we're going, and that's a very high client traffic activity for the housing authority. So it's not just the fact that we have offices there, but we have high client interaction and the need for customer service for people coming to our location to do business with that. So we'll be looking at that. The other impact, and I think some of you had very excellent questions, looking at, well, what's not just the specific buildings that are going to be eliminated, but what is the impact on the utility of those buildings? How useful are they if we don't have very easy access going forward? So we'll be looking forward and hopefully in a very helpful way, working with the Department of Transportation to look at how we can assist them in reaching our residents who are going to be impacted, because we'll be partners in that regard, and also in really understanding what our long-term needs. I do want to mention one specific thing. You voted on the Espinosa budget just a few minutes ago. We have just, and Espinosa is one of a number of arrangements or redevelopments that the housing authority has where you wear multiple hats, as I understand it, where you are not only the Housing Authority Commission, but you're the board of limited liability corporations for some of these properties. And just as I was coming in the room today, I was informed that there is going to be a need for a special meeting to authorize some changes in documents so that we can properly close out some of these transactions. So just anticipating that probably around the beginning of week after next, we'll call a special meeting. We'll ask for you to call a special meeting, most likely of multiple entities. And perhaps we can do much of it virtually, but we will need a quorum in order to conclude certain authorizations and things so that we can properly close out those documents. But otherwise, I just want to say it really is a pleasure for me to be here. I have received a very warm welcome. I am very pleased to get to work with the team that you have all here assembled in leadership. And I'm beginning to meet more and more of the frontline workers. Departments are having department meetings, and I'm having a chance to meet with them. And one of the things that I emphasize is we're all professionals. We're trying to do our jobs as best as we can. But I like to have fun while we're doing it. And so we try to have a fun along the way. I look forward to working with all of you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gressley. Any questions or comments for Mr. Gressley regarding the items that he included in his report from the board? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gressley. All right, we'll go to item number 11, identify emerging issues to be addressed by the board and interim executive director at future meetings, receive updates on activities of the interim executive director, and direct the interim executive director accordingly. Are there any items that we would like to have put on a upcoming meeting from the board? Any points that we need to include in discussion on the phone or the video? Hearing none. Now we will go to the last item on our agenda today, citizen participation. Items raised under this portion of the agenda cannot be deliberated or acted upon by the Board of Commissioners for the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority until the notice provisions of the open meeting law have been complied with. If you wish to speak on matters not listed on or the posted agenda, please step to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and please spell your last name for the record. The amount of time any single speaker is allowed will be limited to 3 minutes. If any member of the board wishes to extend the length of a presentation, this will be done by the chair or by the board by majority vote. All comments by the speaker should be relevant to the Board of Commissioners of the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name's Maggie Golby, Goulby. I live at 900 Brush Street, and I moved in on February 9th, and I'd like to know what anybody plans on doing about that. Is infested with bed bugs so bad. Hundreds and hundreds of bed bugs. And it seems that it's been addressed before, but it obviously didn't get done all the way. And I mean, I moved in, I got thousands of bites, but you can't find them. They're in the walls. Somebody threw a mattress away just yesterday out into the courtyard, completely infested with bed bugs. Bad. We even have a picture of that mattress. So it's really important that, talk about, upgrading things, that really needs to be done. That's horrible. That's really all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. When did you say you moved in?
At Sartina Plaza on February 9th.
Of this year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming and speaking to us today.
It's not a good subject. I know nobody wants to talk
No, it's
about
important.
it.
Thank you.
Because every time you go to the office and you say something, they're very defensive. I didn't bring them here. That's not the issue. I said, we've got to work together to get rid of it. It's got to go.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you so much. Any others would like to speak during citizen participation? Seeing none, we'll close citizen participation. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. This meeting is adjourned.